Hello and welcome back to my live show. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Shonta. I'm a personal branding and marketing strategist. And as you can see today, I have a very special guest. Elise Smith is with us today to talk about the 4 C's to overcoming your inner dream stealer. This is a hot topic because we all go through those experiences where we're trying to do something new and we're trying to break into new territory. And we know that God is calling us to this thing, but the struggles come up, the fears come up, and there's so many things that we have to push through in our mindsets before we can even get to the thing. Well, Elise is going to help us to work through some of those things today, and I'll let her introduce herself in just a minute. But I want you to really take some good notes and really engage with everything that we're going to be talking about today, and just really lean in and just really figure out what it is that God is saying to you right now and in this season. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Elise introduce herself and tell us about everything that she's doing right now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shonta. It's such a pleasure being on this show today. I'm Elise Smith, Christian Business Strategist. I empower Christian women entrepreneurs to reach those sales goals that seem so elusive sometimes by partnering with God, empowering their mindset, and utilizing biblical business strategy. I've been in the corporate world for well over 12 years and really just learning all about business and sales. And what I do is I take those Fortune 500 company principles and I look at them through the lens of the Bible so that you can build your business in the Lord's way.
I love that, especially when you talk about building your business the Lord's way. I believe that there's so many business principles in the scriptures that we sometimes overlook when we're not thinking about it through the lens of business and what God is calling us to do with being good stewards over the talents that He's given us. So today is all about overcoming the inner dream stealer. So first, Elise, can you just talk about what the inner dream stealer is and how does it show up?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm very familiar with this one because we all have that voice that tells us we're not good enough, you're a failure, all of these negative things that actually, if we listen to that voice, it will really steal away our dreams. And the secret to that is that it's not us, it's not our voice. And that's the thing that we have to remember. It's the adversarial's voice, right? It's Satan's voice because we all have that angel on one shoulder and, the devil on another, right? I love that graphic and that concept, but it's so true. And so if we listen to that voice, of course, Satan does not want us to fulfill the purpose that God has given us. And so as we get closer and closer to that cusp of greatness that we are on right now, and there can be levels of that, the adversary is going to try to stop us. And so we need to be really prepared and put on kind of almost that whole armor of God and that shield to be able to defend against that. And I found that out very personally, gosh, I think it was like 6 years ago, where I was in a network marketing company and I was in, the thousands of people there at the convention thing that was going on. And they call it edutainment, where they were doing this skit on stage to help us understand a principle of business. And it was so powerful because in this skit, every single time that the guy would look at his reflection, he would be yelling at himself all these terrible things. Like, you're a failure. Why do you even try? You're just gonna, you're not gonna amount to anything. No one wants to hear what you have to say. All these kinds of things. And oh my heavens, it was such a moment for me because for the first time, I heard someone speak out loud what I was saying to myself in my head. And I thought that nobody else could hear that, right? But the thing is, God's in there with us. And he's like, stop talking to my daughter that way, And so, as the skit goes on and on, there's a moment where his future self comes to speak to him. And he says, if you continue to talk to yourself like this, you are going to miss out on some amazing things in your life. And I remember my husband, he's like looking around everywhere and everyone's having a good time and laughing because I guess it really was funny. But he looks over at me and I'm just ugly crying, like I am losing it. And it was because I decided in that moment that I'm not going to let my inner dream stealer steal my dreams. I'm not going to let Satan win because we need to take captive our thoughts so that we can fulfill the purpose God's given us and really build up his kingdom here on earth.
That's so powerful. I remember now some of you already know, if you're following me, if you're connected with me already, you know that I went on the Food Network, and I competed in a competition, and it was a grilling competition. So some of you already know the story, but just in case you don't know, I'll just give you the quick rundown. So I went to compete on this grilling show, and I actually won, and I won an outdoor kitchen in my backyard, and it is beautiful. So, but when I was getting ready to go on the show, like I almost called the show and said, I'm not coming. Because I did not think that my grilling skills were good enough to be on TV. So in my mind, I was like, you know what, I can do a little something, but I'm not like TV good. And so when I think about like, what if I had called the show and said, hey, I'm not coming, like I can grill, but I'm not like TV good. And I ended up going there and just really pushing through some of the thoughts, like everything that Elise is talking about. And I ended up winning. But the interesting thing is that when I went into the last round, which is the third round, I was losing. And so I was losing and I was exhausted because I hadn't slept or ate well because I was too nervous. So I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I'm losing. My two competitors are ahead of me. I'm in third place. They're tied. I'm in third place. And I just don't have the energy. And I said this little prayer and I said, God, if you don't help me, I'm not going to make it. I was like, God, I need you to help me push through this last round. And so, but at first I was like, oh my goodness, I'm losing. There's no way that, I'm going to be able to come back. I'm like, these competitors came to cook. And I was like, this is not a game for them. And so all of the thoughts that were going through my mind, and I heard one of the competitors, he said, well, it's still anybody's game. And I'm like, you're right. That means I can still win. And so just really shifting that mindset helped me to get in a position to do what I needed to do with that last round to bring that outdoor kitchen home. So everything that you're talking about makes so much sense. And not just when it comes to business, but in anything that we do in life. So Elise, can you talk about some of the things that we can do when we're dealing with those kinds of thoughts that come up? The thoughts that say things like, well, you're not good enough, you don't have enough money, or you don't belong here, or who are you to try to do this? Give us some points on how we can actually overcome some of those thoughts when they come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to see in the comments below, like when is a time where your inner dream stealer really attacks you, right? Because we all have those moments and those events. And that's actually the first key is awareness. Right. And so, I know that when my husband and I first got started in network marketing long time ago, and I've kind of moved on from that to now, but I had to start there. And we knew we needed to talk to people. And so we signed ourselves up for so many networking events, and it was ridiculous. I put out on a whole calendar the whole year, all these different networking events that we were going to attend. And guess how many we attended in that whole year?
How many?
Zero. None for a whole year, because here's what would happen. We would sit in the car and we would look at each other and we'd be like, do you want to go? And I'd be like, no. And he'd be like, do you want to go? And I'd be like, no.
Never ask an introvert, do they want to go?
Exactly. And I knew that I needed to get out there. I knew that I needed to talk to people. And that was the way that I was going to build up the kingdom of God, right? Through my business and this calling that he had given me. But the thing is every time that I went to go open that door in my car to go into the networking event, it'd be like, no one wants to hear what you have to say. You're going to make a fool out of yourself. You don't know how to do this, like all that, blah, 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 kind of stuff, right? and so if I'm listening to that, and if we listen to that, then of course we'll see it. There's a powerful biblical principle here of seek and ye shall find.
Yes.
And that's not just our conscience seeking it, it's our unconscious seeking it as well. And so I'm going to give you guys the 4 C's to overcoming your inner dream stealer. So get your pen and paper out. Let's see in the comments when it is that you feel like you're most attacked by the adversary for those events, because that first C is to check in with yourself, especially when you're having those negative feelings such as fear or doubt or, even depression, is that you want to check in with yourself and say, okay, what are the disempowering thoughts that I could be having right now that are making me feel this way? Because we know that our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our actions, and our actions lead to our results, or sometimes our inactions lead to our results, right? Like sitting in the car at the networking event. And so the first thing is we want to check in with ourselves, and check in with yourself often. Sometimes we have to set like an alarm every hour on our phone just to say, okay, what kind of empowering thoughts am I having? What kind of disempowering thoughts am I having? Because I'll tell you, and this is so embarrassing, but it wasn't until I was like 26, 27 years old that I realized I could control my own thoughts and my feelings. Like I thought that growing up, you just had to play damage control with whatever came out, which is a terrible way to live. And so it actually talks about that in Romans, is take captive the thoughts that we have so that we can co-create with God for what we want to have. So that's our first key, is check in with ourselves. The next one is to challenge what comes up. Just because it pops in our head does not mean that we need to just accept it as truth. In fact, that's the adversarial's game, right? Is that he wants us to think that just because it popped in our head, it's true. But we know he's the father of all lies. Right. And we know that the stuff he's feeding us is all just baloney, right? And so we need to just say to ourselves, how true is that for me, really? Or what is another way to look at this? So when we have that moment of, Satan is in our ear and saying, you're just a failure, right? We can say, how true is that for me, really? I did a live show and I totally rocked it today. Or, I got out of bed today. That's sometimes a huge success. And we can start looking for the proof of the opposite, right? So Shonta, I want to kind of turn it back over to you. Is like, what's a negative thought that you have that you can kind of challenge in that moment?
I think for me, just really going back to the example that I shared about when you said, when you're talking about like really checking in with yourself, that's something I really had to do because doing this show was like totally out of my comfort zone. When I'm doing things that I'm confident in, those thoughts don't come up, right? It's really when you're stepping into something new and doing something different, as God is always challenging us to do, then those thoughts come up, and really just saying, okay, first of all, I'm here. The producers selected me to be here, and this is my appointed time and place right now. And the other thing, when you said, when you use the example of, well, I don't want to look like a fool. That was my first thought, right? And when I started the show, just a little secret, I was not even trying to win. I was just trying not to look like a fool. I was like, listen, my grilling skills are like, okay, in my opinion. I'm like, they're okay. And I'm like, I just don't want to look like a fool, right? But when I really started like getting into the mix of things, like all of that stuff started to go away. So I would say like one thing is just really getting into action can kind of crush those things. Instead of being paralyzed or stuck in it, getting into action and moving in it, that's one of the fastest ways to actually crush those things. So that's one of the things that helps me, is like actually moving and taking action.
Yes, I love it. Absolutely. And that totally goes with what we're talking about here today. So that first one is check in. That second one is challenge, because we're not just going to accept it as truth, right? How true is that for me, really? Or what's another way to look at that? We're going to start looking at it and putting ourselves in a position to be able to take control. And then the third one is to choose. We get to co-create with God whatever we want to have, right? And the first thing in order to be able to co-create with God is to choose what we want to have. So if I'm sitting there, in my car at that networking event, and I'm like listening to all the terrible things in my head, or you're at the grilling competition, right? And we have all of that going on, then what we can say is, okay, how do I want to feel in this moment? How do I want to think? Right? Like if I was as empowered as I want to feel right now, what would be the thoughts that would run through my head? And you almost play this kind of what if game, right? Yeah. Like I had this really interesting experience where one of my coaches, she totally encouraged me to get out of my comfort zone and cut my hair. Like my hair has always been like way below my shoulders, and I've always kind of felt like the girl next door. And I had done so much personal development and really owned my confidence and got out there, even though I'm an introvert too.
Yeah.
But I had done a lot of change inside, and I wanted my outside to match that. And so when she said like, cut your hair, I was like, okay, let's do it. Right. And I remember, and I was terrified. It was not, okay, let's do it. I was like, no, no way. In fact, my husband and I, we'd practiced what I was going to say if she wanted me to cut my hair that day. because we were doing this whole makeover thing. It was hilarious, but it worked out really well because I went to, a store right afterwards, and I was like, wow, I'm like feeling the way that I feel inside right now. And I thought to myself, what would a confident person do right now? Like, how would they talk to this cashier? And all of a sudden I started becoming that. And it was so neat. But we have to choose first. So choose, what do you want to feel right now? Or what do you want to think right now? Even if it feels so far away from where you're at right now. So how did that work in the grilling situation? Like, did you choose how you wanted to feel? Was there a particular emotion that you were going for?
I did. I actually, it was really kind of like some moments were overwhelming. Like one of the things that I do when I feel overwhelmed is I literally step out of it. Like I literally say when I could feel overwhelmed almost like a cloak. And so when I start to feel that, I literally say, nope, I'm not leaning into overwhelm. I step out of it and I say, I'm not giving in to feeling overwhelmed. And so one of the parts was we had to do like 3 salads in like a certain amount of time, like on the grill. And I'm like, 3 salads, that's a lot. And so it was kind of overwhelming. So it was so funny that afterwards they were like, well, Shonta, what was your strategy with doing the 3 salads? I said, my strategy was no strategy. so, um, so I think that in moments it's okay to say, okay, you know what? I don't really have everything all together in this moment, but I'm not going to let that overwhelm, take me over and make me feel like it's too much for me. And I had to tell myself, it's not too much for me. I can totally do this. And you'd be surprised at how many people actually sent me a message like, can you send me the recipe for those salads? Because they looked amazing. So it just reminds me of all of the stuff that we can do when we really just step into who God is calling us to be. Because I feel like there's a gap between like where we are in our own beliefs and where God is calling us to be. And sometimes it really just takes stepping into it. Just like what you said, when you're like, well, how would a confident person speak? How would a confident person show up? What does a confident person look like? And when we understand that we can really just step into it and put those things on and begin to become what God is calling us to be, it not only causes shifts in our own lives, but in other people's lives around us. So think about like what we're doing and how people are watching us and how we're showing up, and think about the influence, right, that we're called to be, and really start walking that thing out. So all of that was a big revelation for me and understanding, wait a minute, this is not just about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about everyone who I'm called to serve, everyone who is watching me and looking to me for guidance and direction, and really everyone who needs to see God in me. When people see me, I want them to see God, right? And so that's really, at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about.
Yes. And that totally helps to kind of bridge that gap of choosing, right? Is that sometimes we're here and we want to be here and we don't know how to
Right.
get there.
Right.
And it starts with that choice. God has given us choice. And the thing is we choose between that little angel on our shoulder and that little devil on our shoulder every
Right.
minute of every day. But I want you guys to think about, what has God called you to do in your life, and especially with your business? Because I believe, and I think Shonta does too, that your business is a calling from God to
Yes.
be able to serve and build up the kingdom of God in just the way that you are designed to do so. And so ask God for that message from Him directly. What is it that He wants you to remember when you have that moment of choice, right? When it's that devil on your shoulder saying, no way you're going to win this competition, compared to, Heavenly Father that's over there cheering you on and saying,
Right.
yes, you've got this, and it's for a bigger purpose, right?
Mhm.
Because here's the thing, is that we are all daughters of God, and we are priceless, and we are precious, and we have the power from Him to be able to fulfill the calling that He has given us. So always remember that, and always choose that, and choose to look for that, because you will find it when you do. So the fourth C here, to be able to kind of create all of this magic, we've got check in, challenge,
Mhm.
choose, and then change. Now, change seems so simple. Just change your thoughts, just change your emotions. It's all good. Just, choose and then change. But it's not always that easy.
Mhm.
And the thing is we need to have some of the same tools that the adversary uses against us. And one of those things is, think about it this way. Let's say that you are in a courtroom, right? And Satan is on one side of the room and he's saying, man, you are a failure because of this, 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 and this. And he's just laying out the facts, right? And he's going back all the way to kindergarten when you cheated on your test and you didn't even know what cheating was, right? You know? And so that's the thing, is that he shoves that proof up in your face so much that that's all you can see. But when we start using our choice, that chosen, that agency that God gives us to be able to choose, then we can say, okay, I know that that's a lie, and I'm going to look for the opposite. And then I want you to start listing out all of the reasons why you are really a success, and not just any success, but a massive success. And list out those small reasons, list out the huge ones. It doesn't matter, everywhere in between. And as you seek, you really will find. What you focus on expands. And so you'll start seeing over and over again that you're a success in so many different ways. There was a time where I felt such a failure, and everyone would look at my life and say, like, she's on top of it, like she's got it all together. And I would feel like a failure. And my husband, he's such a sweetheart, he would say every night, what was your success today? And he helped me to start seeing that I really was a success. Of course, from a humble place, because we know all success comes from God, right? And that we get to just be his messengers. But what we seek, we really do find. So that's one way that you can change, is to start looking for the opposite of the proof that Satan is showing you.
I love that. And one of the words you mentioned something about, I always say this, I always say whatever you focus on will grow. And you said a few minutes ago, you said whatever you focus on will expand. Hi, Phyllis. Whatever you focus on will expand. And it's so true. And I feel like even in this situation with dealing with the inner dream stealer, one of the greatest things you could do is really just change what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on the negative, just like what Elise said, you're thinking about the negative things and you're thinking about the reason why you can't succeed, really shifting your focus and saying, okay, but wait a minute, here's why I deserve this. Here's why now this is my time. Even if I don't feel worthy, I deserve it because God says I do. I deserve it because God finds me worthy of this. And so shifting that focus, and I always say, whatever you're not feeding has to die, right? Anything that's not eating will eventually die, right? So if you're not feeding those negative thoughts, if you're not feeding into those thoughts that are keeping you stuck, you've got the inner dream stealer fighting with the future you, right? And so imagine if there are two dogs and they're fighting back and forth, right? Whichever one you're not feeding is eventually going to get weaker, right? And the one that you're feeding is going to get stronger and continue to drive you into becoming the future you. So I love what you talk about when it comes to really just changing and leaning into that process, because like who wants to change, right? It's so comfortable being comfortable, right? So changing is usually the hard thing that most of us want to shy away from. But even when you talk about like cutting your hair, that was a change that you made. And I remember when I first met you, one of the first things that I noticed about you, I was like, Elise has the cutest haircut. And I told you that. I said, I love your haircut. It's so cute. And so really making the changes on the inside, but you made that change on the inside first.
Yeah.
You started on the outside, and that's how God works. When God begins to change us, he changes us from the inside out. And so making that change on the inside and then making it on the outside really develop you into who you are right now, and still in the process of becoming, as we always will be. So tell us, like, how can we come up with a plan? Like we talked about the 4 C's. We talked about first of all checking in. Then we talked about the challenge, and then we talked about choosing, and then we talked about changing. So how can we come up with a plan?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is to be aware of that, right? Like when you are feeling down in the dumps, and we actually had Phyllis here, where does fear come from and how do you get past it? And I think that we can really incorporate that into what you just asked, is that we know that all of those feelings come from the adversary, right? Just knowing that, because in 2 Timothy, it talks about how that God is not a God of fear or of doubt or of any of those negative things. And so knowing that those voices and those, the fear and the doubt and all of that doesn't come from you, it comes from Satan. And it comes from Satan for a purpose. And that is to stop you from doing the work that you've been called to do. You know you're on the right path when the adversary is hitting you hard. And so when you're fearful, when you are doubting, in fact, you can't really have faith without doubt. And I know that seems totally contradictory. But the thing is that if you take doubt out of the mixture, then you have knowledge.
Wow.
You don't have faith, because you have to have faith and doubt. You have to have this opposition in order to be able to have faith there. Otherwise, it becomes knowledge. And the scriptures talk about how we are meant to have faith. And so, when Phyllis talks about, where does fear come from? Fear comes from the adversary trying to stop you from what it is that you are meant to do. And how do we get past it is really stepping in to what God has called us to do, to take action, just like you were talking about. So that plan is being aware. When you have those negative emotions that you feel like are holding you back, then check in with yourself and just say, what are those thoughts, right? And then that plan from there is, okay, I now want to choose something better. So choose what that is for you, and then go do the thing that makes you feel that way. Maybe in the past you wanted motivation and you listened to a TED Talk, or you hopped on one of Shonta's amazing lives and you were like so pumped up and you're like, yes, I can do this, right? Whatever that is, go do that again, and that can help. But that can be your strategy, is don't just live with it. If you have a feeling that you want to change, then figure out what you want to feel, learn the truth, and remember the truth about who you are as a daughter of God and how powerful you are to be able to make that choice. And then go do the thing that will help you feel that way, because it helped you feel that way in the past. Or look for and focus on the positive. So that's what I would say would be a really good strategy. Don't live with it. Make sure you choose what it is that you want to have, and then make sure that you are doing something to take action to get it.
Right. I love that, Elise, because sometimes we really just have to remember that we don't have to accept everything that's been that's thrown at us, right? We don't have to accept that. So I feel like just, like you talked about, just being aware and realizing, wait a minute, I don't have to live with this. I don't have to sit in this. I can actually rise up and say no. Say no to fear. Say no to doubt. And really say, when you say no to those things, you have to say yes to something else, right? Yes to embracing that future you, and yes to embracing the dream that God put on the inside of you, and recognizing that dream came from Him. That dream that's embedded deep in your heart, those things that you're just naturally inclined to, God put those things in your heart. And I believe that when God calls you, He will also equip you to be able to do the things that you're called to do. And I feel like that dream stiller comes up in every situation when you're trying to do this new thing, right? I always say that the comfort zone is the danger zone.
Yes.
If you're comfortable right now, you're in the danger zone, right? We should constantly be moving and growing and shifting and just moving with God, right? Because anything that's moving is alive, right? We understand how living water means moving water, right? When you think about that stream, that water that's moving, that's living water, is something that's moving. And if we're always shifting and moving and becoming better, then we're always tapping into something new, right? And so I feel like these situations we have to deal with is not just a one-time thing, right? Every time we get ready to do something new, it's going to come up again, right? So that's why I'm so thankful that Elise was able to give some tips on like how to come up with a plan, right? Because it's going to come up again, right? You're going to do something, you're going to get comfortable, you're going to have a great time, and then it's going to be time to shift. And God is going to be like, okay, now it's time to move on and do something different. And that thing is going to come up again. And so knowing how to deal with those thoughts, knowing how to push through them, I really believe that the ones who learn how to push through those thoughts and really get to the other side, that's when you experience real success. That's when you experience real purpose, right? Because we understand that the real success is the fulfillment of purpose. That's what real success is, right? And so when that dream stealer comes up, is really, really trying to rob you of your purpose. And so pushing through that really helps you to really become who you are and really understand what purpose is and what you were designed to do, what you were put on this earth to do.
Yes.
So,
And that concept of like new level, new devil, right? Is that every time you hit a new level in your life or your business or your personal development, you are going to have a new devil come in and try to stop you. And it's not that you are ever going to shut out the adversary's voice. Just kind of know that right now. But what you do have is you have the knob to turn his volume down. So that he becomes this tiny little mouse that's screaming at you compared to this monster and this giant. So we have that power for sure. Love it.
yes. So, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I want to give Elise, you were just so awesome with giving us these tips today and talking about the 4 C's. Please tell people how they can connect with you and some of the things that you have available that people can access right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for this incredible opportunity. I love everything that you're doing. This audience seems amazing. So I would love to have you guys come join us in our Faithful Ladypreneurs Facebook group. This is for Christian women entrepreneurs who are ready to take their business to the next level by partnering with God. So we give amazing Christian biblical business strategies in that group. You are also more than welcome to advertise your group on Saturdays in our comment thread. So that way you get even more exposure to be able to build up the kingdom of God in your way. And also, when you do come join that group, make sure you ask about our monthly Bible study. We do a Bible study where we look at the Bible through the lens of our business. And then that way we can help to know how to overcome those obstacles that may be holding us back. So check out Faithful Ladypreneurs Facebook group.
All right. So you guys, you heard it from Elise. Go check out her group, Faithful Ladypreneurs. I am inside of the group. It is awesome. And it's very engaged. I love the questions that she's in there asking and really getting engaged with her audience. It's not your typical, not your typical Facebook group. So check her out. You can also see the link to Elise's group right in the comments of this video. So you can just tap that link and go right over there and join her Facebook group. Okay. You guys, if you have any follow-up questions, you can just drop them in the comments, or you can just go on over to Elise and connect with her, and I'm sure she'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. You guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I will see y'all next Thursday, and you will see Elise inside of her group, okay? So thank you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, and I'll be seeing you again soon.
Thanks, guys.